As a lot of you know, I started my work in the counseling field way back in 1985 after I'd gotten clean from my heroin addiction. As was usual in those days, my first jobs were in drug and alcohol rehabs, where what I'm going to talk about today, the family roles, were discussed ad nauseum a lot. And I've seen a ton of change in the psychology field since then. But what I've understood about these family roles we create or that are created for us in our families has truly stood the test of time. So there's four roles I'll talk about today: the hero, the scapegoat, the lost child, and the mascot. And it's not about pigeonholing you into some type. It's really about having another lens of understanding for why you do what you do and why others do what they do. So today I'll teach you what each role is, the research. Yeah, we've got some research now, what it means for you in your relationships today, and what to do about it if you recognize yourself in one of them. So, as always, stay tuned. Welcome back to the podcast. We are back, season 9. We're in it. And just a quick announcement that my next book, Stop Reacting, Start Connecting, is going to be out in late September. September 29th is currently the drop date. So, we'll keep you posted. And I want to say this. Today's topic was a request from my Substack community, the One Love Collective, and I went back and forth about doing this topic because I don't want it to be like the love languages thing, right? We all know I don't love the love languages. I did an episode earlier on that because it's just this things, this preacher created, no research around it, etc. The family roles do have research around them. But a lot of what I'm going to talk about today is, I'm going to always try to distinguish it. I'm going to give you a lot of research, but a lot of it's anecdotal, just my 40 years, again, of doing this and all the different places I've worked and all the different kinds of people I've worked with. And so it's an interesting thing. It's one of those things I have found that really helps describe when people tell me things like, oh, my family doesn't take me seriously, or God, everyone always depends on me for everything. It's like I'm the default person for X, Y, or Z, or I always get the blame. When I hear those things, I got to tell you, it often goes back to the family roles. So we're going to talk about them today. You're going to see where you maybe fit or don't fit. And I'm going to try to really give you, as I always do, a very even perspective about what the limitations are and what I see and don't see. So the four roles that most people mean when they talk about these family roles are the hero, the scapegoat, the lost child, and the mascot. Now, I'm going to give you some very broad strokes here, which again are all based on my own experiences working in the field for so long, and again, actual research. So I want, as always, I want to be very transparent about what you're going to get, because I think it's easy to just say, oh, this is it and this is a thing. And when it's not quite so direct, quite so clear. So you'll likely see yourself in more than one category or be firmly in one category, but not fit every example I'm going to give. And that's all fine. I'll come back to all that later. You also might notice that, oh, when I was a kid, I was this way, but now I'm this way. Again, it all really fits. So, and I will be sharing about my own family because my siblings and I fit very neatly in these categories in a lot of ways. So I'll just give some personal sharing examples on the way to kind of help illustrate some points. Nothing too deep, but a few things, because my siblings are all, the ones I'm going to talk about today are still alive. So, we want to be fair to everybody. All right, let's break them down. So the hero is often called, the golden child. This is the kid who generally did well in school. They excelled at sports, or maybe with an instrument, something they really excelled at, or maybe it was all of it. They learned another language early, something. Maybe they often go on to become what we consider successful by the metrics of whatever society you might live in. Here in the US, that person would likely be a professional of some kind, doctor, lawyer, whatever, or a successful entrepreneur. They own their own business, or they've really advanced in their chosen field in some way, or maybe advanced the field itself. You see them as CEOs, leaders in different areas. No matter what they choose, they're the best at it. That's really the point. So they could be a blue collar person, right? They could be a bus driver, but they're the best damn bus driver you've ever met. You know what I mean? In that town, they're known, that kind of thing. They often get married or have long-term partners, and again, often are quote unquote successful by certain metrics like making money. If they're not making a lot of money, like maybe they are that bus driver, right? They're maybe not making, a ton of money by society standards, but they're good with money. They save their money. They create stability for themselves, right? And their families. That's how they do. Sometimes the hero might seem arrogant, but I don't see them as arrogant. I really don't. I know they can come across that way. Like there's the right way and the wrong way, and my way's the right way kind of thing. But I find, because of the work I do, that they're often acting a certain way really to cover up this terrible feeling they have that someone is going to discover that they really don't know what they're doing. Imposter syndrome, it rides heavy here, okay? And now every role has a job in the family, and the hero's job is to give the family validation. So, sure, I'm a screw up, but you should see my brother Robert. In my family, it was my brother Robert. He's amazing. Right? Like he's does this and this, and he's got that, and he's gone to school for this, and they were like that person. Okay. The scapegoat is often called the family black sheep. This is the sibling who's been screwing up since day one. They got in trouble at school. They were always underachieving. I tell clients this: if the middle school principal knew your name, you were likely a scapegoat. I say with love. You've been hearing things, you've been hearing people sighing heavily your whole life. Oh, she had so much potential, or he had so much potential, things like that. Your job, if you're in this category, I've always called it the family Jesus Christ. I say this with love because, you're on the cross, you're the martyr, you're taking all the blame of the family. All the sins hang on you. All the blame gets directed at this one person. And that's why I think of you as kind of the family martyr in a way. I love this story. This is a story of my first swear word. You ready? I know. Who doesn't want to hear the story of Abby's first swear word? So I don't remember it because I'm a lot younger than my siblings, but it's legend in my family. Okay. So here's the legend. It has what's been said is that one night at dinner, I asked for more cooked carrots. I was about apparently 5 years old. I loved cooked carrots. They were my favorite thing. I still love cooked carrots, by the way. And apparently there was none left. And I said, oh shit. Okay. And everyone at the table looked straight at my brother, Michael, who was our resident scapegoat, my brother, Michael. Michaels, you always get in trouble. I'm just going to say this off the record here. Okay. Just between you and I. Tell me if I'm wrong. Comment below the video if you're watching on YouTube, whatever you want. Michaels, I always think of the Life cereal commercial, give it to Mikey, he'll eat anything. In my crew of drug addicts, there was a Michael who would take any drug anytime and tell us what it was. If you didn't know what something was, I don't know. Michaels, I love you. I always love a Michael. I know I'm going to love them. And I know that they've been a little on the fringe. I don't know what that is with that name. So you can let me know if I'm wrong. I know there's an Archangel Michael or something. I don't know. I'm just saying. Anyway, everyone at the table stared at my brother, Michael. I didn't get in trouble. He did. Now, to be fair, it was him that taught me that swear word. But still, and you can imagine that I learned a lot that day about how to get away with things. Okay. I knew it would go to Michael no matter what I did. So, excuse me. Sorry. Scapegoats often have different jobs too over the years. Like when you see scapegoats at work, I see them like my brother Michael, that, they switch jobs, they have different jobs, their careers are always careening in one direction or another. Their holy grail, I say this with love, is some type of union job where they can't get fired. And I'm not saying that all people in a union are scapegoats, because they're certainly not. You end up with, every role can be found in a union job. I'm just saying that this is like their holy grail where they can't get fired, or it's very hard to get fired. They're often behind with money and they're often dealing with debt or bad credit or just trying to get ahead or, but mostly they just seem to have bad luck. If something negative happens, it always seems to happen to them. I'm not, again, saying they're not lovable because they really are, but they'll also get on your last nerve. Sometimes you're thinking like, really, that happened too? That and that and that? There's just a way. All right. The lost child. The lost child is the one nobody's looking at. They've really learned early not to make waves. They don't ask for much. They're the disappearing act, right? And the family, I would say that any family often couldn't tell you like what that kid is into, what they're about, who their friends are. They're sort of again, they're kind of lost. They're invisible because everybody else is too busy doing their own job to notice there's another kid in the room. This is that kid. They're emotionally sensitive. I find them to be incredibly loyal. Again, not that other roles can't be loyal or sensitive. I'm just saying it's really where I find them. I find scapegoats to be loyal to a fault also, I will say. You know what I mean? The difference is that a scapegoat is loyal in a way like if you need $10 and they only have $5, the scapegoat will give you their $5 and go steal $5 and then get in trouble for that so you can have 10. The lost child isn't going to do that. They're not going to get in trouble to give it to you, but they will try to be very loyal. And they're definitely more comfortable. Lost children are more comfortable in their own heads or with like kind of that one or two close people. Then, they're not going to be as comfortable in a crowd. And their job in the family is to need nothing. One less kid to worry about, one less thing on the pile. And everybody else gets to feel like at least somebody in the house is fine, or at least they're fine, right? And in my house, it was my sister, Lori. So, and I tell this story that, so as I got older, because again, I'm a lot younger than my siblings. And so my parents did not take vacations forever. And then they finally, and we didn't have money, but they finally started to, I think when I was probably 7 or 8. And their big vacation was going away for the 4th of July. They would go up to, I remember this really well, to the Pines Hotel in the Catskill Mountains. Anybody from, upstate New York? And yeah, just like in the Dirty Dancing movie, okay? I later worked all over the Catskills. I worked at the Concord and Grossinger's and, oh my God, all of them. Anyway, the Neville. Anyway, so, and they would go for just 3 days, my poor parents, like just 3 days, like that was their big vacation, right? The long weekend. And they'd leave my oldest sister, the lost child, in charge, right? She would make sure that I was fed, that I got a bath, that I went to bed, nearly on time, and that we didn't blow all the money my parents left on junk food, right? But then my parents would come home and my hero brother, that brother Robert, was the one who got the credit. So that's sort of how that would work, okay? Again, you might relate to that kind of thing. And that's really the role right there. Lost children often grow up and they become teachers, counselors, nurses. I think it makes sense because when you think about it, they've had years of practice paying close attention to people and really being kind of the second in command or the behind the scenes support. So those kind of jobs make sense. And then finally, there's the mascot, who's often referred to as the family comedian or the family cheerleader. And the mascot isn't always great at finishing tasks. They've never had to, they've never had to. I'm just going to say it there, right? They would always get away with things with like kind of a wink and a nod. Like they would do most of it and be like, come on, and sort of, they're very persuasive, very charismatic, and obviously manipulative in ways you probably don't always see right away because of their kind of easy charisma and, they're very likable. I always say, if you've ever been sold something and you later walked out of that store thinking, wait, I went in for, I went in for tape and I came out with a large screen TV, your salesperson was probably a mascot. I'm telling you that right now. obviously they're often seen so in all kinds of sales. You see them in the arts and the entertainment field because the limelight is really no problem for this group. They might be a lawyer, but they'll probably be like a trial lawyer. Do you know what I mean? Like, you get the idea. So their job is to break the tension. When the room gets bad, the mascot might do something funny. Everybody exhales. Nobody has to deal with whatever was about to happen. In my house, maybe that was my brother Michael, the scapegoat, knocking over a glass of milk, and all this angry attention might go to him, and I would make a joke, and that would alleviate, some of that tension, right? And make it all better. What gets missed about the mascot is that everybody tends to like them, but almost nobody takes them seriously. So the family will keep things from this kid to protect them, when in fact, of course, the mascot usually knows far more about what's going wrong at home than anyone gives them credit for. They just don't have anywhere to talk about it. They don't have anywhere to like internally think it through or process it. So again, they make a joke instead. And of course, if you've been following me for a while, I'm definitely a mascot, right? In my family of origin, and I'm the baby of the family, the youngest, blah, blah, blah. But there are a lot of years between me and the youngest of my older siblings. So I think that's why because you've also probably guessed, I've taken on a lot of hero qualities, right? I have a lot of hero stuff. So like I said earlier, you might fit neatly somewhere here or you might not. This isn't about, again, like typecasting. It's about trying to understand, excuse me. It's about trying to understand your beliefs about yourself and why others might treat you in particular ways. I hope that makes sense. I'm going to have a sip of my little Powerade here. They are not sponsoring this. Mm. Okay, sorry, I'm just getting over a cold, so hey, I might cough a little. All right, so let's talk about where these roles come from. Where do they come from? And again, they come out of the addiction world, which, as I said, is where I first learned about them. There was a woman, Sharon Wegscheider Cruz, who published a book, a really famous book in 1981 called Another Chance. And it was about families organized around a parent's drinking. And she described the family as having a set of jobs that like get handed out to who's ever available. Now, in that book, she named 5, but one of them was the enabler. And that's usually the sober spouse of the person with the alcohol or drug problem. So it's not one of the kids, which is how you get, that's how you really get to the final 4 that we're talking about today, those four roles, because we're not counting the enabler. Now, a year after that book came out, the very famous Claudia Black, who, if you haven't read her stuff, she's amazing, she published her own version, and she gave you those same 4 kids under different names. She called them the responsible child, the adjuster, the placater, and another one, the acting out child. So to me, that's just different vocabulary. Identical jobs, same roles. So depending on what you're reading or, what your background is, you might notice that the names change, but to me, the roles don't. They're really the same. Now, later in 91, 2 people, Potter and Williams, they created the first sort of solid instrument we had for measuring these roles. And that was called the Children's Roles Inventory. And they dropped the enabler role on purpose also, because again, they were screening for what you did as a kid, right? And the enabler is a grown-up job. So when they went back and tested the structure again a few years later, so in the mid 90s and then into the late 90s, and those same 4 roles held up across different samples. So that's the good news. So when I say there's these 4, there really are. And there's, again, some research backing me up. As always, when I talk about the research or the great free download I have today or anything else, you can go to the website, find this episode, and all the links are there to all the research I use. And then if you're watching on YouTube, like and subscribe, you can find everything below the video. So, and one more thing before we get into what the research says, because you might be thinking, oh, I don't come from an alcoholic family, Abby, so none of this applies to me, or, there's no drug addiction. So yes, these roles came out of studying families with a drinking problem, but researchers later compared families where a parent was alcohol dependent to families where nobody was, and they found no real difference in how strongly people identified with the roles. That's the thing. In other words, they found that these roles are true for different kinds of families whether there's drug or alcohol use or not. What predicted whether the roles kind of held up in families was dysfunction. It was the level of dysfunction. So whatever flavor your family of dysfunction your family happened to have, really, it's about that. So you didn't need an addict in the house to have been handed one of these roles, is what I'm really telling you. You needed a family that was under enough strain, enough dysfunction, that it needed somebody to do one of these things, to be a scapegoat, to be a hero, they needed these functions handled to make the family kind of work, right? I hope that makes sense to you. So whether or not you come from a drug or alcohol background, these are probably going to fit. But I think the closer you are to those backgrounds, the closer it might be that the closer they fit. Again, actually, the research does not back. Look at, I said something against what the research says. The research says it's going to be the same. So there you go. But it's the level of dysfunction. So let's talk about what the research says about each role briefly. I really want to talk about that. So for a long time, most of this was just, clinical observation. That's all this was. This was just people writing about what they saw doing the work, which basically is a polite way of saying, you got some very smart women who watched a lot of families and wrote down what they saw. Okay. But and that's not nothing. Clinical observation is very important, but Mama here, I like my research, right? Mama likes her research. So this is what I've got role by role, just briefly. Let's talk about the heroes. Heroes do well, at least on paper. When you look again at the research, they score higher on self-esteem than the scapegoats and the lost children. And they're more what we call satisfied with their support system, which basically means with the people they can lean on when they need help. They also don't show the higher rates of depression in adulthood that lost children and scapegoats do. Okay, so now the catch is that the hero's drive tends to get pointed at whatever their parents valued rather than anything that they necessarily pick for themselves. So that's the thing to look at. And we'll talk about this when I'm going to talk about what to do depending on who you are. Okay. Now, scapegoats really have it the hardest. And I want you to hear that clearly. If this is you, if you feel like you fall in this category, they score lower on self-esteem and they're less satisfied by a strong margin with the people they feel like they can lean on with their support system. They also report more depression as adults. So when you look at the research, what it shows is a kid who kept getting blamed for things that were already wrong in that house. So that kid figured out early that nothing they did well was going to count anyway. So why try? And that kid ended up angry and pointing it outward with probably some difficult behaviors, for other people to handle. And everybody else in the family's just busy looking fine. Everything's fine, nothing to see here, move along. Okay, that's scapegoats. Now, lost children look a lot like scapegoats on the numbers. They do. When you look at the research, with lower self-esteem, less satisfaction, again, with their support, with the people around them. They do report more depression in adulthood too. Where they differ is what it looks like from the outside. Because from the outside, nothing's wrong. And that's the whole problem. With scapegoats, you see it. It's showing up. They're getting fired from their job. They're in debt. They're whatever, right? The lost children are sort of invisible with all these problems. And the research talks about loneliness and sadness that nobody noticed. it talks about, they have trouble sometimes making close friends. And all those problems sort of follow them into adulthood. And adults who end up with very little contact with they also end up as adults who have very little contact with their families they grew up in often. Not always, but often, as you might imagine. Okay. Mascots look like heroes on the numbers. So they have higher self-esteem, more satisfaction, again, with the people who support them, with the people around them. They do not show raised depression as adults either. So they look very similar. The cost with mascots lands somewhere a little different. It's because nobody ever took the mascot seriously. They tend to have a hard time with emotional intimacy later on. And getting down to their own deeper feelings is the thing. It's not something they've had much practice at. So true closeness, true emotional intimacy is a problem. And that's where their problems show up. One more thing I want to say is that the scapegoat and the lost child are the two roles most strongly tied to how dysfunctional the family was in the first place. I really want you to hear that. So, in other words, the research shows that you don't often see those roles, those two particular roles, scapegoat and lost child, in healthy, functional families. But you do see heroes and mascots in healthy, functional families. So that's what's really interesting about that. Okay. So a couple of things to know about all this. A majority of the research is based, of course, on people looking back and remembering their own childhoods, which is, I'm going to say, is not the most reliable thing in the world. And it can't tell you, of course, whether the role caused the depression, for example, or whether being depressed changed how somebody remembers being a kid, right? I mean, think about it. And I think the effect, to me, when I looked at the numbers, the effects were a little small, on the smaller side, in my humble opinion. So again, take all this as useful information, not like a verdict. Again, we're not just like typecasting you or saying you're this, or that. Let's talk about birth order too, because I definitely want to talk about that, because believe it or not, this whole model was built on birth order originally. When I first learned it, it was all about birth order. The hero is supposed to be the oldest, right? Because they carry responsibility first. The scapegoat is supposed to be the next one down because their accomplishments always get compared to the heroes, right? And the mascot's always supposed to be the baby because, the family protects the baby, right? But when it finally got tested, when they finally came around to testing it, surveying adults at that point who'd grown up around alcohol dependence, for example, birth order showed no significant differences on any of the scales they used for the different roles. So that birth order wasn't a thing. What did show up as something to look at was gender. Women were scoring higher on the lost child and men were scoring higher on mascot. And that's, of course, taking out, females being firstborn more than males, or males being lastborn more than females, that kind of thing. That's, taking into account those variables. So, and there was some really interesting work here in the US suggesting that in African-American families, the oldest daughter is more likely to land in the hero role, which is tied to kind of the caretaking older girls in African-American families are already expected to do in general. That's not all Black families, by any means, but there's some really good studies about it. So it's really interesting. Again, I'll come back to my own house, for example. My oldest sister was the lost child, even though she was the oldest, and my oldest brother got the hero job, even though he came after her. And, the one down from him is the scapegoat, and I am the baby and the mascot. So, again, but the role really doesn't get handed to you just by your birth order, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It gets handed out by what your family needed and who was available to do the job. And it's why the age gaps matter, the number of kids matters, whether you were a girl or, male or female mattered, whether the job was already taken mattered. All of it matters, right? So there's not some easy thing. I also looked at, because I have listeners, thank you. We're in 190 something countries right now. And so thank you, everyone listening everywhere else. So I always try to look, is this just an American phenomenon? Is it, just in the US? And I do want to be straight about that. These roles were developed in the United States, and most of the research on them was done here. Including the work, obviously, on African American families, I just mentioned. But one of the better recent studies about depression, which I've been referring to all along, that did come out of the university in the UK. And again, found the same pattern with the scapegoat and the lost child being the roles tied to family dysfunction and to depression later on. So, but past that, there isn't a lot. Like, I couldn't find anything in Asia. Like, I did some work. I could not. So the people who have gone through this whole body of work, they're pretty direct that very little of it has looked at other cultures, and that families vary enough across cultures and across the ways families get put together, even that, of course, I think the model needs updating. I hope someone listening is inspired. I know I have a lot of people who are in school who listen to the podcast. I would do a dissertation on this. How cool, in other countries. I think that would be so amazing. And I'll feature you later on the podcast. Wouldn't that be cool? So, and I do work with people around the world. So I will say, again, anecdotally, I've worked with people from India, and I have worked with people from Japan and Taiwan. I'm thinking like China, like different countries. And I have found a lot of these roles do apply. So, take with that what you will. So if you see yourself or your kids in any of these roles, again, use the information as informative, not as a prescription. I get what I'm always trying to say, right? Okay, so how your role shows up now. Let's talk about it. You might have stopped. You might have stopped being a kid. I guess mostly. I don't know. I don't think I've ever stopped being a kid. But whether you've grown up, right? But that role followed you likely. It came with you into your romantic relationships, your friendships, your job, the way you talk to yourself, your internal voice, right? And again, these are some very broad brushstrokes, but I'm hoping some information will be helpful to you if you see yourself in any of these roles, or again, maybe your kids. So let's get to it. If you were the hero, you likely take on more than you should and then resent it. At work, you're the one everybody leans on maybe, and you don't say no enough. And at home, you're probably managing everybody's feelings, calling it love. I say with love, right? You're also probably terrible at receiving. Yeah, I see you. So when somebody tries to take care of you, you get weird about it. I know, I'm saying it, and immediately want to, you immediately want to do something for them. You're keeping score in your relationships all the time. That's the issue, right? That's the problem. So and that's something you want to change, right? And I'll talk about that in a minute. If you were the scapegoat, you walk into rooms braced for trouble. Somebody's tone shifts and you're already sure it's about you. And when there's a problem, you assume you're the reason before you've heard any of the details, or maybe you went the other way and got really loud about it. So you fight first and ask questions later. I've seen that. And then you get treated the same way you were treated at home. There's a lot of self-fulfilling prophecy that's been probably running for years around this stuff. So either way, you have a hard time believing anybody's on your side, even when people are. If you were the lost child and here you are as an adult, you probably don't ask. You probably don't ask anything, I guess. So how I want to say that. You've likely built your personality around being really low maintenance, having opinions you don't say out loud, not even noticing your opinions. And you likely end up in relationships where you know everything about them and they know almost nothing about you. You likely at work do really well. You do careful, invisible work and probably watch somebody else who's louder get the credit. And you tell yourself it's fine and it isn't fine. and there's resentment in there, probably pointed at yourself because you don't like to blame others. And if you were the mascot, you're funny about serious things. You know, your partner probably tries to start a real conversation. You make a joke, everybody laughs, and the conversation is over, which was the point, wasn't it? Because emotional intimacy isn't comfortable for you, and getting in touch with your own feelings has really never been your thing. At work, mascots, you know, they usually do fine and often do well because everybody likes having them, you know, around. They like having you in the room. You're good with clients. You're good in a crisis where, you know, somebody has to keep things light. It's just going to cost you where maybe you don't get taken as seriously, so you get passed over for the heavier work or maybe even some promotions. And finishing things, you're not always good at that. Handling conflict head on is another place you probably struggle. So, okay. So those are the struggles. So what do you do about it? You know my shtick. I have a shtick. Don't I have a shtick? Abby has a shtick. Is to give you action steps, you know, to make all this information useful. Otherwise, it's just like, isn't it fun? You know, I did create a free download for this week. It's a quiz. How could I not, right? I'm calling it, which role are you still playing? You know, and what it is though, it's a self-assessment about your life right now, not about your childhood. So I'm hoping it's going to help you work out which role you're in today. It's going to take you, you know, 5 minutes. So you can do that. You can do that now. You can stop listening and, you know, go download that, and come back and listen to your part. But listen to all of them now because I think you're already guessed where you are. And I do have a great, I'm really excited about the Therapy to Go bundle today that goes with this. So I'll talk about that at the very end, so I'm going to give you action tips now, but I'm going to give you more in the bundle, of course, because that's what I do. All right. So if you're the hero, there's a few things I want you to do. I want you to watch for that automatic yes. Practice saying, you ready? Here's your mantra. Let me get back to you on that, Joan. Let me get back to you about that, Bob. Another sip, sorry. Let me get back to you about that, my kid, my child. It's going to buy you the pause time you need. And then get back to them and say no to the ones you should be saying no to, right? You're not going to ghost people. You're not going to just say, let me get back to you and disappear, right? You're going to, you know, have a boundary and you're going to go back or say yes or no is basically it. You're going to give a real answer. Okay. The other thing I want you to do if you're the hero is once this week, you're going to hate this one. Get ready to hate me. Once this week, let somebody do something for you without evening the score. They're going to do something for you. You're going to make eye contact. You're going to put a hand on your chest and you're going to look them in the eye and say, thank you. That's it. I know. It's making you want to just pass out, isn't it? Yeah. If this makes you want to pass out, you're a hero. Let yourself truly receive something without giving anything back. I see you. I am you. I have a lot of this. And then the third thing I want you to do, and this is really a good exercise I've had clients do. I want you to write down your top 3 values. Just write them down. Top 3 values. Okay. What are my top 3 things that are my deal breakers, my top values? Then ask yourself whether they're yours or whether they came from your parents or a coach or somebody else who mattered to you the most growing up. Okay. I know. So write down the values first. Don't think about the people, but then think about if they're the same, oh, these are the same values as my parents or whoever, that it doesn't make it wrong. I'm not saying that's a wrong thing. It's fine to have your parents' values. I'm saying, think about it. Make sure they are your values and that you've chosen them now as an adult. Okay. Oh, my nose is itching. Sorry. Okay. I'm back. If you're the scapegoat, here's what I want you to do. When something goes wrong, before you respond, name the specific thing you did. Right? If you did something wrong, it should be an action, should be a verb somewhere in there. Not what you added to the mood, not how you could have handled it better. We all know you could have. If you can't name an action, it's probably not yours to be blaming yourself about. So I'd like you to stop. There you go. End of. Okay. The other thing I'd like you to do is notice if your family still puts you in this role. And if they do, you need a boundary. You got to decide ahead of time what you'll say. What's my favorite? There are, when they bring up your past, oh, remember when you used to screw up in all these ways? Ha ha ha. It's so funny. And they love to tell the stories about what a screw up you are or were. You can, my favorite, there are so many things I'm excited to talk about with you, and that's not one of them. And then change the subject or leave. You don't have to, we're not trying to win an argument. You just have to stop showing up in that same way of like self-deprecating humor, stop it. Okay. And then also when you decide in your head somebody's annoyed with you, I want you to stop and ask yourself whether you have any actual evidence of that. Because I'm going to tell you most of the time it's a memory. It's not really what's happening. All right. If you're the lost child, once a day, say what you want before you ask anybody else what they want. My favorite is like, instead of saying, where do you want to go for dinner? You say, hey, I'd like to go out to dinner to blah, blah, blah. And then you can still be open to what other people want, but say what you want first, right? Which movie you want to watch first. Don't wait to hear their answer first. You go first. In your next meeting at work, or if maybe you volunteer at your kid's school or whatever that is, give your idea first instead of waiting for everybody else to go. So I don't want you to be the silent one in the room anymore, is what I'm asking you to do for the next week. And then the last thing I want you to do is tell one person one true thing about yourself that they didn't already know. And it's okay if it's uncomfortable. Being known, letting people really get to know you is a skill. And, you're not incapable. You're out of practice. You haven't practiced this skill. Like any skill, you got to practice it. And then lastly, if you're the mascot, here's what I want you to do. I want you to set a timer for 3 times a day, or a reminder of some kind for 3 times a day for a week. And when it goes off, stop and name what you're feeling right then. You're not fixing anything. It's not about that. I want you to build the habit of identifying your feelings, past, fine. Everything's fine. Everything's great. It's all good. Nothing to see here, right? In the Therapy to Go bundle I have today, there's a full feelings list to help you broaden your feelings vocabulary. So if you need that, otherwise you can go download a feelings list somewhere with those funny faces on it, whatever you want to do. The other thing I want you to do if you're a mascot is I want you to watch for the joke that turns up when something real is starting. When you're, anytime you make a joke, really, notice what was happening before. And if you can, let a few seconds pass before you say the funny thing, or don't even say the funny thing. See what happens. And the last thing I want you to do is when somebody asks how you're doing and you can feel the deflection coming or the I'm fine, answer it. One sentence straight, no bit, no shtick, just answer it. Okay. So let me wrap up. And then I'll talk about the Therapy to Go bundle in case you want to do more work in any of these areas. If you notice you get really stuck in one of these roles and want to get better. But let me just say first that should you pick one of these and call it your type? No. Maybe. Yes. I don't know. No. I would say mostly no. I'll tell you what I'd like you to do with it. Claudia Black said, and I can't remember in what, and I apologize, Claudia, that she said that in a family that's working, everybody plays a bunch of roles and moves between them depending on what's called for that day. Somebody's the responsible one on Tuesday, somebody else is the funny one at dinner on Wednesday, and then next month they trade. It's when a family comes under strain that the roles stop moving and people get stuck with one job. And that's where the trouble is. So the point isn't to me figuring out which one you are necessarily, right? It's noticing which one you're still doing when nobody's asked you to, right? Again, you got handed a certain job as a kid and you got good at it because you had to then. The family it needed it then, but that family, even if you're still close to your family now, they don't need it now. Okay. Things need to shift. So even if it feels like they need you to be this now, they don't. And you can be different if you choose. It's all about, of course, creating a new self-image, a new way of talking to yourself, right? Your internal dialogue. It's about creating healthy boundaries with your family, your friends, excuse me, everybody important in your life. God, I wish someone had written a boundaries book. Oh, that was me. Okay. Uh, or you can search for free on my website if you don't want to buy the book. Boundaries, family. I'll also link to some of those, in the blog on the website. So, you can go search. You don't have to always buy the book. But, work on this, right? So get the free download, which role you're still playing if you're interested. It's always fun to take a little quiz. Come on. Who doesn't like to do that? And then the Therapy to Go bundle. So Therapy to Go bundles are $10 if you want to go deeper on something, if you want to buy it. And it includes that free download that I just mentioned. And so what I did was I separated everybody. There's for the hero, there's a saying no kind of script, like a whole thing for the hero. For the scapegoat, there's a sorting out the blame thing, right? For the lost child, I have like 7 days of going first. For the mascot, there's the whole thing about the checking in. So, and I did all that separately because a lot of us are more than one, right? So you can kind of see where you are and try to use tips maybe from more than one. And then I have journaling prompts that cover everybody to really help you uncover why you do what you do, what you learned in your family, what you're still holding on to, what you can let go, all the things. There's a lot of journaling prompts. I'm not going to lie about it, but I divide them into categories now. And it helps sort of, you can look and see kind of where you want to focus. And then, of course, the feelings list that I mentioned. So all of that, I know, $10, that's it. All of that is in there if you want to get it. If you don't, you don't have to. That is it for today. As always, oh my gosh, I love you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for being here. I can't believe we're in season 9. It's just, it's a lot to even process sometimes how many. I think this is episode 395 or something. It's just, I appreciate you being here with me. There's no reason to do this without you. And this is one of the real joys of my life. I'm going to cry. I'm going to try not to cry. It's really one of the joys of my life and has been for years. And I always said I would stop doing it if it wasn't joyful anymore. And every year it's still joyful. So, sorry. So thank you for being here. I really do love you. Appreciate you. And hey, figure out maybe where you might fit, what might be helpful here, and then leave the rest. All right. Have a wonderful week, and we'll talk real soon.